Hey everyone, welcome to Chris. My name is Chris, and today we are going to be talking about Whiplash. And I am joined by a special guest, a glass of Highland Park Valkyrie single malt scotch. Cheers. So, Whiplash, I was going back through my phone. I'm one of those people that never deletes texts. So I have texts all the way back to like 2011 in my phone. So I searched Whiplash because I was trying to figure out when I first saw it. Back in 2013 to 2017, I was going to a ton of film festivals. Sundance every year, Toronto a couple times, South by Southwest, and just writing about movies, a ton of movies, and most of those things never got any page views whatsoever, even though they did get a lot of nice praise and kind words from the filmmakers. But I actually saw these texts from September of 2014 I had with various people telling them that Whiplash I saw at Toronto and was pretty blown away by. It was my second year going to Toronto. Um, I went in 2013. This is a bit of an aside, but how I got validated, I guess, as a more of a journalist or film critic was we had been my writing partner Travis and I had been writing movie analyses on our website for a few years, and we wanted to level up, have people take us more seriously. So we went to the Toronto International Film Festival in 2013 under the premise that we just bought industry passes, right? We paid $400 or $300 to be industry, went to Toronto, saw a bunch of movies. One was Norte, The End of History by Lav Diaz, which was incredible, like a 4.5 hour movie based on Crime and Punishments. Got to do an episode on that movie one day, but we leveraged that into getting press accreditation to Sundance because we had been industry at Toronto and we had a great body of work, right? We weren't just writing the basic bullshit reviews. It's actually New School Critics is the moniker that Travis and I go under, where the term NewSchoolChris comes from, in case you were curious about that. But going to Toronto in 2013, buying our way in was cool, but it wasn't as validating as getting to go back as accredited press. So we leveraged the Sundance accreditation and Slamdance and a couple other festivals into becoming official press to Toronto. So that 2014 TIFF was my first time being press going back and felt very validating, right? It was exciting because I just become official with my now wife, Marie, which was fun. So it was an exciting time to be there. I didn't know what I was going to see. You know, it can be a bit of a shit show at these festivals. Just so many people trying to get into movies, especially the better ones. Then you're going to a lot of duds, like a ton of duds. One of the texts that I had here was how annoying the festival had been, that I'd seen something like 6 movies and hated all of them except for Whiplash. I've been really excited about Whiplash because I've been at Sundance when it premiered, and everybody was raving about it at Sundance. Oh, did you see Whiplash? Whiplash is the best. Blah blah blah. I couldn't get in. I had the lowly press pass that didn't really let you do much. Drink. So I had been hearing about this movie for a long time. I liked Miles Teller. I had caught him at the 2013 Sundance in, what was the movie called? The Spectacular Now, which I thought was actually really well done in terms of having some twists and turns on the young teen coming of age romance subgenre. He was wearing an Indians hat, Miles Teller was, during the Spectacular Now premiere at Sundance, and they did a Q&A afterwards. And I saw he had a Cleveland Indians hat on, and I'm from Ohio. I'm a huge Cleveland sports fan. So I went up to him afterwards because, you know, nobody really knew him back at that point. So you could go up to him after the Q&A and be like, hey, I liked you in the movie. And I asked him about the Indians, and he just kind of looked at me. He's like, it's a hat, man. It's just a hat, and walked away. And then said he was a Phillies fan. I was just like, what the don't wear the hat. If you're not an Indians fan, don't wear the Indians hat. Is it that hard? Despite that disappointment, I was still excited for Whiplash. As an artist, I mean, I write fiction, I write poetry. Those are my two main goals. All of this stuff that I do, analyzing movies, books, albums, TV shows, all of it is to better myself, improve myself as an author, because I'm deconstructing these works, figuring out how they're being successful or where they're fucking up. It helps me figure out what I'm doing in my own work. So even this right now is just me trying to get my thoughts on these projects and get a different perspective on them. So when I approach my stories, I might be able to channel a little bit of that into my own work. So I understand some of the obsessions that goes on when you're on that level. And this movie, while an exaggeration, right? I don't think most people could handle what Andrew Neiman goes through in Whiplash. For the most part, though, there's something really alluring about this movie. And I like self-destruction movies in general, even better when that self-destruction is wrapped up in greatness or catharsis or something exquisite that's both monstrous and delirious. Like Fight Club is exactly that, right? The worse off Tyler Durden gets or Edward Norton gets, the more free he feels, and ultimately reaching this rock bottom moment brings him to a place of, I don't know, glory in some sense, or rebirth. It's always weird when those opposites happen. And this movie is very much in that vein of self-destruction leading closer to self-realization, and what is the line between those two things. So I was all about it. I knew as soon as I saw the movie at TIFF that it was going to be a hit. People at Sundance were telling the truth. They knew exactly what was up, and that it was going to be something that I related to and carried with me for a long time. I think I've seen the movie 5 or 6 times now. Like, I saw it at TIFF, and when it came out in October of 2014, I saw it with my wife, and then I saw it with a friend. So I saw it 3 times in theaters, and then bought it immediately as soon as I could, and just sometimes throw it on. I've never been a musician, so the musical aspects of it don't really, I mean, they're interesting to me. I'm not going to say they don't appeal to me, but it was interesting seeing, as somebody that's a writer and obsessive in that way, that translate to a musician, and being able to see his approach and how it mirrors things that I do. There was a lot of me that I saw in this, and I mentioned the allure of the movie earlier. I think for a lot of people that want to be great, we want to throw ourselves into the work the way Andrew does. And for whatever reason, we get scared of that, whether it's what our friends will think, our parents will think, maybe it's a sense of responsibility we have to, you know, I'll do it on the side, but I need to like work normal hours or get a normal job. We're afraid to commit. Or some people, you know, in the movie, there's a subplot of Andrew trying to date Nicole and breaking up with her because he doesn't want to divide his time between her and music. And I'm sure that there have been people listening to this, though not that many people are listening to this podcast yet. One day, though, there's people that are listening to this that have been in similar positions. I know a lot of, when I was 20 to 25, I wasn't interested in relationships because I just wanted to read, write, and live and focus on that. There were times where I was dating girls. We'd go on a couple dates, and they would ask me if I wanted to do something that night. And it's like, I had seen her Monday, Tuesday, and she's asking me if I want to do something Wednesday. And I told her, no, I'm going to write. And I actually had one girl ask me if I was stupid because she's just like, are you stupid? I was like, what do you mean? She's like, you want to write and not come hang out with me. I'm asking you to come hang out with me, and like kept putting it in quotes. I was like, yeah, I get that, but I had hung out with other people, you know. I would rather write right now, and we can hang out tomorrow, you know. And that did not make her happy, but there was a lot of people that I didn't want to give them the time. They didn't feel worth the time to me in exchange for what I would lose reading and writing until I met my wife. She was somebody who I was like, you know what? Yeah, I can make room. I want to make room for her in my life. But I really like that aspect of Andrew, that cutting edge that he had, that soul dedication is something that I think a lot of people, either if you're in your 20s, you aspire to in some ways, or if you're out of your 20s, you either find rekindling something in you or capturing something that you missed and you wish you had done. So the movie really, depending on your age, depending on your experiences, can really have different implications for you in terms of how Andrew's approaching it, like aspirational, inspirational, or like giving you serious regret and nostalgia for something that you've lost, which I think is interesting, that where you're at in your life can dictate how you feel about just the movie as a whole. And Andrew, I mean, there's a lot of movies where that happens, but I definitely think this one might be a bit more poignant for some people because it gets at the dream that we have to be great at something. And those of us that never really take the shots to fulfill it, even though we have the passion, we just didn't have the courage. So there's something really admirable about Andrew having that courage, even if at the same time it makes him an asshole. And that's what makes this movie so complicated. Is, do you agree with the idea that it's when the chair was thrown at Charlie Parker that he became Bird? And that it's through abuse, it's through these hurdles that artists face that they overcome and find their greatest moments. So was J.K. Simmons as Terrence Fletcher right in the shit that he put Andrew through in order to get Andrew to the point where he gives this tremendous performance? That's the complicated thing, right? That's, I think, one of the other aspects of this movie that's so great is how do you separate the pain from the gain? How do you separate what it is that the artist has to go through to achieve that place from what they went through to achieve that place? Is it worth it at the end? Is it worth it for just that moment to have gone through everything that you went through and sacrifice everything that you went through? And I think that's one of the fascinating things about the end of the movie is that we don't know what happens with Andrew, right? They set it up to where he's performing, where is it? Before going on stage. Okay, Fletcher invites Andrew to drum with his band at the JVC Jazz Festival. And it's going to be a lot of people, like prominent people there. So Fletcher's plan at this point, because he's upset that Andrew ended up telling on him and getting him fired, that he's going to ruin Andrew in front of all these prominent people who will then never hire him. That's the adversity in this moment. And that's one of the complicated things too. Was that his plan? Did he want to destroy Andrew? Or was this setting up the final hurdle of, now, have your greatest performance now and prove everybody that you're greater than you ever thought you could be and that there's this power inside of you? On the one hand, he's a monster. On the other hand, he's kind of like this guiding angel leading Andrew to the promised land. But Andrew really steps up in this moment and puts on this incredible performance, this climactic performance that should leave any audience member, like viewer, not just the audience members in the movie, but viewers watching the movie in a state of awe at what he's able to do and just the pure jazzness in terms of the creativity and inspiration and going off the cuff. It's incredible. And the connection that Andrew and Fletcher share in that moment where they go from adversaries to finally fully in sync, finally fully understanding one another and being in the same rhythm, the same tempo for once instead of off tempo to one another. Amazing. Incredible. But we don't know what's next for Andrew, right? He still was a fucking disaster in the early parts of that performance because of Fletcher. And Fletcher's still a bit disgraced due to getting fired from his position after the scandal came out of how he was abusing students. So what happens? Does Andrew go from this incredible moment to actually having a career and becoming Charlie Parker? That implication is there in the movie, but the implication also is that he could just end up like his dad. Like, this could be the one moment he ever has of just really living up to his potential, and what's after that. And the movie kind of leaves us on that mystery of not knowing where he goes. And that's what's kind of, I'm going to use the word fascinating again, fascinating to me, is because when you ask that question, is it worth it? At first, it seems worth it because, yeah, look at this performance he gave, and it has to lead to something amazing, right? But you never really know as an artist. You could have a great movie come out and never make another one. You could have a hit song and think that this is going to be the song that changes your career, you're on your way, and nothing ever happens again. Do you think Lou Bega, when Mambo No. 5 came out and was everywhere, was just like, yes, I made it, I've been on my grind, now's my time, I'm going to sell all these albums, I'm going to be great? What did he go on to do? Look at Jaden Smith. Jaden Smith is the son of Will Smith. Has all the resources at his disposal. He can tutor under anybody or learn from anyone in the world that he wants to. He has the time and money to have any experience that he wants, to spend the time doing anything that he wants. His early mixtapes and singles were getting high praise from people when he was like 13, 14, 15. And even his debut album got good reviews, strong reviews, but he only sold 20,000 units for his album. And when his second album, Eris, came out, he sold 25,000 units. This is Jaden Smith, the son of Will Smith, selling 25,000 units, despite all the resources available to him. What's that tell you about the hope that anybody else in the world has, no matter what high moment that they have? What's possible for them to build on? Do they have what it takes? And on the one hand, you could argue Andrew does. We've seen his tenacity. We've seen his spirit. And I'm sure that the jazz world in New York City is a bit different than becoming a mainstream pop sensation, right? But it's still interesting to think about what fate could befall Andrew for this, and the precariousness that artists continuously face, that whatever success you have in one performance or whatever project or work doesn't guarantee you any future success. And that's kind of horrifying and terrifying. And that's why you can't have it be about the response. It just has to be about the obsession with the work and being the best that it can be and as great as you can be, and challenging yourself time and again to see where you can go. I think Andrew has that in him, but I'd be very curious. Yeah, I'm glad that Damien Chazelle didn't give us more, because it feels right when you look at the larger theme to kind of leave off there. But it does make me curious to have a conversation with Damien about where did he view Andrew going? What does he think the rest of Andrew's story looks like? But I mean, the movie has so many iconic, I say iconic, but so many spectacular scenes and moments. The shot selection's great. The acting I thought was spectacular. It made J.K. Simmons into a different beast, right? As a character actor, he had always had these great roles where you're like, I like that guy. But this was a whole different animal, and really shot him to a place of, I think, a higher level of standing. Interesting that Miles Teller hasn't really done anything more in the aftermath of it. He did Whiplash in 2014, That Awkward Moment, Divergent, ooh, poor guy. Two Night Stand, Fantastic Four, Get a job, War Dogs, Bleed for This, Only the Brave, Thank You for Your Service, and now he's in the new Top Gun. That's rough. I mean, you would think that somebody that gave that performance of that caliber would be able to. The I guess the one last story I have about this was, I'm in Austin, Texas, and I was at the Continental Club on South Congress. Great live music venue, has a lot of jazz, and my friend, who I went to go see this movie with, actually had me go to see a jazz band like a year ago with him, and at one point they played Caravan, and I just started geeking out because I am not somebody that's listened to a lot of jazz music in general. I've given it tries here and there, but it just doesn't connect with me the way that it does some people. Hopefully one day it does, but it was awesome seeing Caravan live and just having that energy of Whiplash and that scene from Whiplash kind of, I don't know, wash over me, and having a bit more of a concept in general of what it would have been like to be in the audience watching Andrew do his thing. So if you've never listened to Caravan live or gone to see jazz live, but you love the movie Whiplash, then do yourself a favor and go and start seeing some live jazz, because it's pretty awesome even if you're not a fan of jazz in general. If you can catch somebody doing Caravan, believe me, you'll be you'll be very happy with the experience that you've had. But Whiplash is definitely up there for me as a movie that I return to every couple years and just need to watch because I find it cathartic and I find it motivating, and it reorients me in a way of just like, yeah, I want to be this, which is terrifying in some ways because, again, Andrew is both inspiring but also terrifying in terms of his single-mindedness and the costs of that. But at the same time, I don't think the movie's far off in terms of what it takes. When you listen to professionals talk about what they go through, I mean, Kobe Bryant, for one, as an example of what he went through day in and day out to be at the level that he had to be at, I feel like he probably makes Whiplash look easy in comparison almost. So, yeah, I mean, most of us are going to want a bit more of a balance in the way that we can, but, if you can do 80-20 rather than the 99-1 or 100-0 that Andrew was at, you're giving yourself more of a fighting chance than if you're going 50-50, 60-40 in terms of balance. Sometimes things just can't be in balance. As hard as that is to hear, as hard as that is to accept, if you aspire to Whiplash, then you're going to have some drive. And I guess that's where the term Whiplash comes in. On the one hand, it's the piece that comes into the movie at several points, but on the other hand, it talks about the pace at which you have to work and the backlash that can come from it and how it can actually cause injury, right? That it's that all this force and momentum only to get stopped short, and what does that do to somebody? So, amazing movie. I think that it is, personally for me, 10 out of 10. It's on that level of just something that I think about often and that's settled into my guts and soul and blood and being. Just real fast, in case people are curious, I haven't been as into every other Damien Chazelle movie. I never saw La La Land, which I don't like to admit, but it had no appeal to me whatsoever. Though I'm sure if I watched it, it would be better than what I expected, but I also just don't want to be annoyed, and it looked like it would annoy me. But if one of you requests it in the way that... Oh yeah, I needed to give a shout out to Sleep Well Beast 8, Aiden, for recommending Whiplash. I'll go watch La La Land. But First Man was another one that I just didn't see because biopics often aren't as fascinating to me, and old school NASA biopics are very not interesting to me. So I really want to see Chazelle come back with something that maybe has the intensity level of Whiplash and the pace of Whiplash rather than the rom-com sing-alongness of La La Land, which I guess there's heartbreak, or the slow and steady wins the race of First Man. His next movie is going to be Babylon, which sounds sci-fi and interesting, but I'm curious to see if he can go. Oh no, right here. On July 15th, 2019, Variety reported that his next film, called Babylon, in 2021 and set in Hollywood in the 1920s. Okay, so not futuristic. Was eyeing Emma Stone to star in it. Brad Pitt has also been rumored to have a role in the movie. Well, I love Brad Pitt, so that I would see. That I would see no matter what, but I don't know. I hope Chazelle has another Whiplash in him. Maybe that's another example. Oh, people are going to be mad about that, but I mean, he did get the Academy Award for Best Director for La La Land, right? I mean, that's pretty huge. But it's somebody else that he had Whiplash. He made Whiplash, and now he's constantly going to be chasing Whiplash. La La Land maybe doesn't hold up in the same way that Whiplash did. First Man probably doesn't hold up in the way that Whiplash did. Will he ever be able to, like Andrew, repeat that performance? I'm curious to find out. But those are my thoughts on Whiplash. I would love to hear your comments, thoughts, concerns. You can leave comments on the YouTube channel if you're watching it on YouTube, or if you're listening to the podcast, just search NewSchoolChris on YouTube. You can also find me on Twitter at Kanye Podcast or at NewSchoolChris, or you can email newschoolchris@gmail.com. And if you want to support this channel / podcast, the easiest way on YouTube is to like, subscribe, or comment. All three things tell YouTube that this is worthwhile content that people are enjoying. And subscribing is really big right now because we need 1,000 subscribers to monetize. Currently at 60, so everyone helps. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, leaving reviews on Apple goes a long way to breaking the show in the top 200. So any of those things would be much appreciated. Until the next time, you can make any requests on any of those mediums that I said earlier. But this has been Chris on the podcast. Chris, I still need to figure out a sign off. We'll talk soon. See ya.